Jake's keys jangled as he pulled them from his pocket, the familiar weight grounding him after another grueling day at the tech firm. Seattle's drizzle coated his car in a fine mist, and the streetlights cast long shadows across his quiet suburban street. At 32, Jake was the guy who'd stop to help a neighbor jumpstart their car or grab extra groceries for the elderly couple next door. His life with Emily, his wife of 7 years, felt like a steady rhythm: date nights at the pier, walks with their golden retriever Max, and plans for a future they'd sketched together over late-night coffee. He believed in their partnership, the kind you build with effort, trust, and small, unspoken gestures. Tonight, though, that rhythm was about to break. He pushed open the front door, expecting the usual, Emily's voice calling out, Max's paws skittering across the floor. Instead, the house was quiet, save for a soft murmur from the living room. Jake kicked off his shoes, assuming Emily was on a call with her sister or a friend. He was about to shout a greeting when her voice stopped him cold. "Jake's clueless," Emily said, her tone light, almost amused. "I've been with Ryan for years, and he has no idea." The words hit like a punch to the chest. Jake froze, his hand still on the doorknob, his breath catching in his throat. Ryan? Her coworker, the one she'd mentioned casually at team dinners? The guy who always seemed too friendly, lingering a bit too long when he dropped her off after late work nights. Jake's pulse quickened, his mind racing to make sense of what he'd heard. He edged closer to the living room, staying out of sight, his body pressed against the wall. "I'm serious," Emily continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "He's so wrapped up in his routine, work, home, repeat. It's like living with a robot. Ryan's different. He gets me." Jake's stomach churned. Every word was a blade, slicing through the life he thought he knew. He wanted to storm in, demand answers, but his feet wouldn't move. Instead, he stood there, gripping the wall, listening as his wife dismantled their marriage. "I don't know how to leave," she said, a hint of frustration creeping in. "Jake's too dependable. It's easier to just stay." Dependable. The word stung more than the betrayal itself. Jake had prided himself on being her rock, working overtime to support her career, planning surprise getaways, even learning to cook her favorite pasta dish. And now? He was just a guy she couldn't be bothered to leave. His chest tightened, a mix of hurt and anger simmering beneath the shock. He could picture her on the couch, phone pressed to her ear, oblivious to the fact that he was home, that he'd heard everything. He should have confronted her. Should have walked in and asked why she'd lied for years, why she'd let him build a life around someone who didn't want him. But the thought of seeing her face, her excuses, her deflections, made him sick. Instead, he backed away silently, grabbing his keys and slipping out the door. The cold night air hit him as he stepped outside, but it did nothing to clear the fog in his head. He climbed into his car, hands shaking as he gripped the steering wheel. For a moment, he just sat there, staring at the dashboard, Emily's words looping in his mind, clueless. Robot. Easier to stay. Jake started the engine and drove, no destination in mind, just a need to move, to put distance between him and the house that no longer felt like home. Seattle's streets blurred past, neon signs, wet pavement, the faint hum of the city winding down. He ended up at the waterfront, pulling into an empty lot near the pier. The dark waves churned below, relentless and indifferent. He cut the engine and leaned back, his breath uneven. Max wasn't there to nudge his hand. Emily wasn't there to ask about his day. It was just him, alone with the truth. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from Emily, "Hey, you home soon?" The casualness of it twisted the knife deeper. She didn't know he'd heard. Didn't know he was unraveling 10 miles away, staring at the ocean like it could swallow his pain. He ignored the message, his thumb hovering over his contacts instead. He scrolled to Mia, an old college friend turned private investigator. They hadn't talked in years, but she was the only person he could think of who'd understand without judgment. He typed a quick message, "Need your help. Can we meet? It's urgent." Then he hit send, his heart pounding. Jake wasn't sure what he was asking for, not yet, but he knew one thing: he wasn't going to let Emily's betrayal define him. If she thought he was clueless, he'd show her just how wrong she was. The pier stretched out before him, silent and vast, and for the first time that night, Jake felt a spark of resolve. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Jake's phone buzzed against the dashboard, the screen lighting up with Mia's reply, "Meet me at the Rusty Anchor, 8 a.m. Bring coffee." He exhaled, the faintest relief cutting through the numbness that had settled over him. The waterfront lot was still empty, the Seattle skyline a distant glow against the early morning haze. Jake hadn't slept, his mind replaying Emily's phone call like a broken record. Jake's clueless. "I've been with Ryan for years." He gripped the steering wheel, channeling his anger into focus. If Emily thought he'd stay her, dependable, fallback, she was about to learn otherwise. By 7:45 a.m., Jake was parked outside the Rusty Anchor, a dive bar near the docks where Mia liked to meet clients. The place wasn't open yet, but the smell of stale beer and fried fish lingered in the air. Jake clutched 2 steaming coffee cups, the heat grounding him as he scanned the lot. A beat-up Jeep pulled in, and Mia stepped out, sharp-eyed, no-nonsense, her dark ponytail swinging as she approached. She hadn't changed much since college, still carrying that quiet confidence that made people trust her instantly. "Rough night?" Mia asked, grabbing the coffee and nodding toward his car. "You look like you've been living in that thing." Jake managed a grim smile. "Something like that. Thanks for meeting me." They slid into a booth at the bar's edge, the only customers in sight. Jake wasted no time, recounting what he'd overheard: Emily's affair with Ryan, her casual dismissal of their marriage, the way she'd called him a robot. His voice stayed steady, but his hands tightened around his cup with every word. Mia listened, jotting notes on a small pad, her expression unreadable. "She's been playing me for years," Jake finished. "I need to know how deep this goes. I'm not confronting her until I have proof." Mia leaned back, tapping her pen. "Smart. Emotional confrontations get messy without evidence. You got anything to start with? Texts, receipts, anything?" Jake shook his head. "Just what I heard. But she's been distant, always on her phone, vague about work trips. I didn't think much of it until now." Mia nodded. "All right. I'll dig into her digital footprint, social media, emails, bank records. If she's hiding something, I'll find it. But Jake, you sure you want to open this box? Truth can hit harder than you expect." "I need to know," he said, his jaw tight. "I've been blind too long." Mia agreed to start immediately, promising an update within 48 hours. Jake handed over Emily's email and social media handles, along with access to their joint bank account. He felt a pang of guilt. Snooping wasn't his style, but Emily's betrayal had rewritten the rules. As Mia drove off, Jake sat in his car, the coffee now cold. He couldn't go home, not yet. Instead, he checked into a cheap motel near the highway, the kind of place that didn't ask questions. He needed space to think, to plan. That afternoon, Jake opened his laptop and started digging himself. He wasn't Mia, but he knew his way around tech. He logged into their shared cloud storage, something Emily rarely touched. Most of it was mundane, tax documents, old photos, but then he found a folder labeled Work. Inside were screenshots of texts between Emily and Ryan, saved like trophies. "Miss you already," one read, timestamped during a weekend Emily claimed she was at a conference. Another, "Jake's out late tonight. Come over?" His stomach twisted, but he kept scrolling, downloading everything to a USB drive. By evening, Mia called with a lead. "Your wife's been sloppy," she said. "She's been using your joint account to Venmo Ryan small amounts, $50 here, $100 there. Looks like she's funding their little getaways. I'm pulling transaction histories now. Also, Ryan's got a public Instagram. He's posted photos from places Emily told you she was visiting for work. Same dates, same backgrounds." Jake's blood ran cold. "Anything else?" "Working on her emails. Give me a day." "Stay low, Jake. Don't tip her off." He hung up, his mind racing. Emily wasn't just cheating, she was siphoning their savings to bankroll her double life. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was financial. Jake's anger hardened into resolve. He wasn't going to let her walk away with half of everything he'd worked for. He opened his banking app, quietly transferring most of their joint funds to a new account in his name. It wasn't stealing, he'd earned every cent, but it was a precaution. If Emily wanted to play dirty, he'd protect himself. The next day, Jake met Mia again, this time at a coffee shop near Pike Place Market. She slid a manila envelope across the table. "You're not gonna like this," she warned. Inside were printouts, bank statements showing thousands moved to Ryan over 2 years, hotel receipts, and a damning email from Emily to Ryan. "I'm done pretending with Jake. Let's plan our exit." The date was 3 months ago. Jake's hand shook as he read it, but he forced himself to stay calm. "She's planning to leave me," he said, voice low. "After everything, she's the one making plans." Mia leaned forward. "You've got enough for a lawyer now. Divorce courts love paper trails. But what's your move? You want to confront her or keep building the case?" Jake thought of Emily's voice, her laugh as she called him clueless. He thought of the years he'd spent building a life she didn't value. "I'm not confronting her yet," he said. "I want her to think she's still in control. Then I'll make my move." Mia grinned. "That's the Jake I remember. I'll keep digging. You start talking to a lawyer." As Jake left the coffee shop, his phone buzzed. Another text from Emily. "Where are you?" "I'm worried." He stared at the screen, her words hollow. She wasn't worried, she was covering her tracks. Jake pocketed the phone without replying, his mind already on the next step. He wasn't the clueless husband she thought he was. Not anymore. Jake sat in his car outside the waterfront restaurant, the Seattle skyline shimmering across the bay. His fingers tapped the steering wheel, a steady rhythm to calm the storm brewing inside him. The manila envelope from Mia rested on the passenger seat, stuffed with evidence of Emily's affair and financial betrayal, bank statements, hotel receipts, and those damning texts with Ryan. Tonight wasn't about pleading or breaking down, it was about taking back control. He'd invited Emily to dinner at their favorite spot, a place where they'd celebrated anniversaries and planned their future. The irony wasn't lost on him. Inside, the restaurant buzzed with clinking glasses and low chatter. Jake arrived early, securing a corner table with a view of the water. He ordered a glass of water, his throat too tight for anything else, and waited. Emily walked in at exactly 7 p.m., her heels clicking as she scanned the room. She spotted him and waved, her smile bright, practiced, like nothing had changed. Jake returned a tight nod, his expression neutral. He'd spent 3 days playing the part of the oblivious husband, texting her back just enough to keep her from suspecting. Now, it was time to drop the act. "You look stressed," Emily said as she sat down, reaching for the menu. "Work been rough?" Jake leaned back, studying her. The ease in her voice, the way she tilted her head, it was all so familiar, yet so hollow now. "Something like that," he said, his tone even. "How about you? Work keeping you busy?" She shrugged, flipping the menu. "Same old. You know how it is." He did know. Thanks to Mia, he knew about the work trips that were covered for weekends with Ryan, the late meetings that ended with hotel charges on their joint account. He swallowed the urge to call her out right then, forcing himself to wait. The server arrived, and they ordered salmon for her, steak for him. The normalcy of it was almost suffocating. Halfway through the meal, as Emily laughed about some office gossip, Jake slid the envelope across the table. Her fork paused midair, her eyes narrowing. "What's this?" she asked, a hint of unease creeping into her voice. "Open it," Jake said, his voice calm but firm. Emily hesitated, then flipped open the envelope. Her face froze as she pulled out the first document, a bank statement highlighting transfers to Ryan. Then the photos, her and Ryan at a vineyard she'd claimed was a solo trip. The texts, "Jake's out late. Come over?" Her hands trembled slightly, but she recovered quickly, setting the papers down with a forced laugh. "Jake, this is ridiculous." "You're spying on me?" "I'm not the one lying," he said, leaning forward. "You've been with Ryan for years. You've been using our money to fund it. You called me clueless, Emily. Said it was easier to stay. Sound familiar?" Her smile vanished, her lips parting as if to argue, but no words came. The restaurant's hum faded into the background, the moment stretching taut between them. "It's not what you think," she finally said, her voice low, almost pleading. "Ryan's just a friend. You're blowing this out of proportion." Jake didn't flinch. "Don't. I've got emails, receipts, everything. You were planning to leave me, weren't you? You just didn't have the guts to do it." Emily's eyes darted around, as if checking for eavesdroppers. Jake, let's not do this here. We can talk at home. No. He cut her off, his voice steady but sharp. We're doing this now. I trusted you. I built my life around you. And you let me believe it was real while you were sneaking around, spending our money, laughing behind my back. She leaned forward, her tone urgent. I didn't mean to hurt you. Things just happened. Ryan was there when I felt alone. You were always working, always so focused on us as a team, but I needed more. Jake's jaw tightened. So you stole from me? Lied to my face? For years? He pulled another document from his jacket, a letter from his lawyer. I've already started the divorce process. You're not getting half of everything, Emily. Not after this. Her face paled, the confidence draining from her. Divorce? Jake, you can't be serious. We can fix this. I'll end things with Ryan. We can go to counseling. I don't want to fix it, he said, standing up. I'm done being your fallback plan. He tossed a few bills on the table for the meal and walked out, leaving her staring at the envelope, the weight of her choices sinking in. Outside, the cool night air hit him, but it felt like freedom. His phone buzzed, Mia, checking in. How'd it go? She texted. Jake typed back, she's rattled. I'm ready for what's next. He slid into his car, the envelope now tucked safely in his bag. Emily thought she could play him, but the game had changed. As he drove away, the city lights blurred past, and for the first time in days, Jake felt a spark of something new, not just anger, but purpose. He wasn't just walking away from a marriage, he was stepping into a life he'd define on his own terms. Jake's new apartment was a small, bare-bones studio on the edge of Seattle, a far cry from the suburban house he'd shared with Emily. The hum of the city filtered through the window as he unpacked his laptop, a single box of essentials, and Max's dog bed. The golden retriever sprawled across the floor, tail thumping, oblivious to the upheaval. Jake scratched Max's ears, grounding himself in the routine. After the restaurant confrontation, he'd walked away from Emily, but the real work was just beginning. He wasn't just escaping her betrayal, he was reclaiming his life. His phone buzzed with a voicemail from Emily, her voice shaky. Jake, please, let's talk. I ended things with Ryan. I messed up, but we can fix this. He deleted it without hesitation. Her words rang hollow, too late to undo years of lies. Jake had already met with his lawyer, Sarah, who'd reviewed Mia's evidence, bank records, texts, emails. You've got a strong case, Sarah had said. She won't walk away with much. Jake nodded, relief mixing with resolve. He'd protect what he'd earned, but more than that, he wanted to rebuild something for himself. Days turned into weeks, and Jake threw himself into a project he'd shelved years ago, a tech startup for an app that streamlined freelance work. Back when he and Emily were newlyweds, he'd sketched the idea on napkins, dreaming of launching it. But her career always came first, her marketing job, her networking trips. He'd let his own ambitions slide to support her. Now, alone in his studio, he coded late into the night, the glow of his laptop a quiet rebellion against the life he'd left behind. Mia kept digging, uncovering more. Emily had tried to cover her tracks, closing accounts and deleting messages, but Mia was relentless. She found a hidden email thread where Emily and Ryan discussed splitting Jake's savings after a divorce. She thought she could bleed you dry and walk away. Mia said over coffee at their usual spot near Pike Place. But you moved the money in time. Smart. Jake sipped his coffee, his jaw tight. She's still texting me, acting like she wants to reconcile. Mia snorted. She's scared. Her affair's out in the open now, Ryan's wife found out, and it's a mess at their office. Emily's losing allies fast. The news didn't surprise Jake. Emily thrived on appearances, and her carefully curated image was cracking. He didn't gloat, though. Her downfall wasn't his goal. He wanted justice, not revenge for its own sake. Sarah filed the divorce papers, citing infidelity and financial misconduct. The evidence was airtight, and Emily's lawyer had little to counter with. Jake felt a weight lift, not because he'd won, but because he was finally free to focus forward. One evening, as Jake debugged code, his brother Lucas called. They'd reconnected after Jake's night at the waterfront, and Lucas had been a steady anchor. "How's the app coming?" Lucas asked, his voice warm over the line. Rough, but getting there, Jake said, leaning back. Got a pitch with investors next week. Lucas whistled. Look at you, big shot. You sound different. Lighter. Jake paused, realizing it was true. The anger that had fueled him after Emily's betrayal was fading, replaced by purpose. He wasn't just surviving, he was building something new. Thanks for letting me crash with you that first week, he said. Kept me sane. Anytime, man, Lucas replied. You're not alone in this. The investor pitch came faster than Jake expected. He stood in a sleek Seattle office, presenting his app to a small group of venture capitalists. His demo ran smoothly, showcasing how freelancers could track projects and payments in one platform. The lead investor, a sharp woman named Claire, leaned forward. This is solid, Jake. Personal story behind it? He hesitated, then decided on honesty. I put my dreams on hold for someone who didn't value them. This app's me taking them back. Claire nodded, impressed. We'll be in touch. A week later, Jake got the call. They were funding his startup Streptococcus. It wasn't millions, but it was enough to hire a small team and scale. He celebrated quietly, taking Max for a long walk along the pier. The same waves that had churned under his heartbreak now felt like a backdrop to possibility. His phone stayed silent, no more text from Emily. Word had spread at her workplace, and she'd taken a leave of absence, her reputation in tatters. Jake didn't reach out. She'd made her choices, now she'd live with them. Mia met him for a final debrief, sliding a USB drive across the table. Last of the evidence, she said. Ryan's trying to play victim, but his wife's filing for divorce too. Emily's alone now, scrambling to save face. Jake pocketed the drive. Thanks, Mia. I couldn't have done this without you. She grinned. Just don't forget me when you're a tech mogul. As Jake walked away, his phone buzzed. One last text from Emily. I'm sorry, Jake. I never meant for it to end like this. He stared at the screen, then deleted the message. He didn't need her apologies. He had his startup, his dog, and a future he was shaping himself. For the first time in years, that was enough. Jake leaned against the railing of the Seattle waterfront, the salty breeze mixing with the distant hum of the city. Max, his golden retriever, tugged at the leash, eager to chase a seagull darting along the pier. 6 months had passed since the restaurant confrontation, and the weight of Emily's betrayal no longer anchored him. His startup, now called Freelance Flow, was gaining traction, with a growing user base and a second round of funding secured. The divorce was finalized, the evidence Mia uncovered ensuring Emily walked away with little. Jake wasn't gloating, but he felt a quiet satisfaction. Justice, not vengeance, had prevailed. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a notification from his app's dashboard, 10,000 active users. He smiled, pocketing the device. The late nights coding, the investor pitches, the long walks with Max while piecing himself back together, it was paying off. He turned pain into purpose, building something that helped others take control of their work, just as he'd taken control of his life. But today wasn't about work. Today, he had a different plan. Jake drove to a community center in downtown Seattle, a low-key building where he'd started volunteering. After the divorce, he'd wanted to give back, to channel his experience into something bigger than himself. He'd found a local charity supporting spouses recovering from betrayal, people like him, blindsided by broken trust. Today, he was dropping off a donation, a chunk of his startup's early profits. The center's director, a warm woman named Carla, met him at the door. This is generous, Jake, she said, glancing at the check. You sure you're not stretching yourself thin? It's worth it, he replied, handing her the envelope. I know what it's like to lose everything you thought was real. If this helps someone else get back on their feet, I'm good. Carla nodded, her eyes kind. You're doing more than you know. Want to stick around? We've got a support group starting soon. Jake hesitated. He'd avoided groups like this, preferring to process things alone. But something about the invitation felt right. Sure, he said, following her inside. The group was small, 8 people, men and women, sharing stories of infidelity and rebuilding. Jake listened, then spoke briefly about his own journey, leaving out the details but sharing the lesson. I thought I'd never move past it, But letting go of what wasn't real gave me room to find what is. Afterward, a guy named Tom, a carpenter with a quiet demeanor, approached him. Your story hit home, Tom said. My ex did the same, years of lies. How'd you keep from getting bitter? Jake thought for a moment. I didn't at first. But I realized being angry only kept me tied to her. Building something new, my app, my life, that's what set me free. Tom nodded, and they exchanged numbers, a small connection that felt like a step forward. As Jake left the center, his phone buzzed again, a text from Emily. Jake, I'm sorry. I know I can't fix this, but I need you to know I regret everything. He stared at the message, his thumb hovering over the reply button. Part of him wanted to respond, to tell her how deeply she'd hurt him. But he didn't. He deleted the text and blocked her number. Her regret wasn't his burden anymore. Back at his apartment, Jake sat at his desk, reviewing emails from his team. Freelance Flow was expanding, with talks of a mobile version and partnerships with co-working spaces. He'd hired 2 developers and a designer, people who believed in his vision. Lucas, his brother, had even flown in to help brainstorm marketing ideas. Over beers the previous weekend, Lucas had grinned and said, You're not just surviving, man. You're killing it. Jake's thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. It was Mia, holding a bottle of wine and a grin. Heard you hit 10K users, she said, stepping inside. Figured we should celebrate. They sat on the balcony, Max sprawled at their feet, and clinked glasses. To new beginnings, Mia said, her eyes glinting with pride. You turned a mess into something amazing. Jake chuckled. Couldn't have done it without you. That evidence you dug up saved me. Mia shrugged. You saved yourself? I just gave you the ammo. They talked late into the night, about the startup, about Mia's latest cases, about the future. For the first time in years, Jake felt unburdened, like the path ahead was his to shape. Emily's betrayal had been a wrecking ball, but it had cleared space for something better. He wasn't the clueless husband anymore. He was a man with a purpose, a business, and a life he was proud of. The next morning, Jake took Max for a walk along the pier, the same spot where he'd sat reeling 6 months ago. The waves rolled in, steady and relentless, but they no longer mirrored his turmoil. He thought about Emily briefly. Last he'd heard, she'd moved to Portland, starting over after her affair cost her job and reputation. He didn't wish her ill, he just didn't care anymore. His focus was here, the app, the charity, the connections he was building with people like Tom and Mia. As the sun climbed higher, Jake tossed the stick for Max, watching the dog bound after it. His phone pinged, a message from Claire, the investor, ready to talk series of funding? Jake grinned, typing a quick reply, let's do it. The horizon stretched wide before him, not a trap but an open road. He didn't have all the answers, but he had something better, a future he was ready to claim.